It's our membership class. Now, we're going to talk about something today, personalities in Jesus. Jesus created people, agreed? And he created us in a wide variety, but really we fall into two major categories. Now, I love the personality tests. I've taken them for years, and Taylor Johnson, Myers-Briggs, the DISC, and all of those are all great. And if you haven't ever taken one, take one. We have one on our website, the Assess Me test, and in an hour's time, you answer the questions honestly, and you read it, and you go, wow, how do they know that? Because there's a design that God has created. We really fall into two categories, best described, illustrated in Matthew 14. You remember the story where the disciples are in the storm and Jesus walks to them on the water? You remember that? Jesus walking on the water is the one that everybody seems to remember. But they're in a storm and they're fighting for their life. Jesus walks out there, scares the storm out of them. And they're all nervous, and he calms them down and says, take heart, don't be afraid, it's me, everything's fine. And then Peter says, well, Lord, if it's really you, then let me walk to you on the water. Well, it was really Jesus. And so he said, it's me, come on out. Peter gets out of the boat, walks to Jesus, begins to sink, cries out to the Lord. Jesus saves him. They get in the boat. The storms calm down, and everybody in the boat worships Jesus. Now, in that story are the two personality types, the innovator, what I call an innovator and a stabilizer. There are people who get out of the boat, and there are people who stay in the boat. People who get out of the boat are what I would call innovators for the sake of this message. They're the ones that are creative, trying new things, building new things. They're always got something going. They're just always, processing and working and trying. They get out of the boat. If it's a child with a set of blocks, the innovator kid is stacking his blocks up or hers as high as they can go until they crash, and then they try it all over again. The stabilizer kid takes the blocks out, and they look at the picture on the box, and they build it just like the picture on the box. And when they're finished, it's awesome because it's just like the picture on the box. Stabilizers are the ones who cook the recipe just the way they're supposed to be cooked. Some professionals have done a great job of cooking. They've mastered a recipe and they put it on the back of the boxes or whatever it is. The stabilizer reads it and makes sure when they pour stuff in a cup, they shake it and make sure it's just right because that's the right recipe and I'm going to get it just right. And they do, and it's masterful and it tastes just like the recipe is supposed to taste. Innovators, when they get in the kitchen, forget the recipes. They may take a glance and say, okay, but innovators think they know a better way to do it than the person who's making $1 million with their recipe. Innovators add a little more of this, a little less of that. Well, I've always done that. That's an innovator. That's what makes them tick. Now, the world needs both the stabilizer, the people that stay in the boat, and the innovators, those who get out of the boat and push the limits. You can't have one without the other. You need both. There are more stabilizers in the world than innovators because it takes a lot of stabilizers to manage one innovator. Peter got out of the boat. The 11 guys stayed in the boat. In life, you need to understand who you are, how God has wired you. The quicker you figure out whether you're an innovator or a stabilizer, the more at peace you'll be. Instead of looking at everybody else thinking, why aren't I like them? You realize I am exactly the way God made me, and I am perfectly happy being who I am. Once you do that, you realize you need to be happy with who you are, and you need to let the other people be happy with who they are. Quit trying to make innovators stay in the boat. Quit trying to make stabilizers get out of the boat. That's the source of a lot of our tensions. Jesus designed the universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Colossians 3 says God created all things through Jesus Christ. All things are created by him, for him, and through him. And without him, nothing would be in existence. Jesus holds all things together. We've read that for 3,500 years in the Bible. We didn't really figure it out as human beings until about 110 years ago. And we realize all the elements of the universe can be boiled down to one little teeny tiny element. And that one little teeny tiny element is called an atom. It's not the smallest element. The elements that make up the atom are the smallest. But the things that make up the atom aren't all by themselves. They're always connected, and that's why the atom is that smallest measurable thing. Jesus created the atom, the thing that we look at and we go, oh, look, this is science. Yes, it's science, but it is God who created the science. And when you look at the one thing that holds all things together, the atom, it's an amazing thing because this Bible is held together by them. Your clothes, your hair, your face, your skin, the steel in the building, the light, everything that you see, every element out there is composed of an atom. And if something happened and the atom disintegrated, the whole world would disintegrate into nothingness. So you would think something as complex as everything we see boils down to this one little element. That element must be incredibly complex, and yet the opposite is true. It is incredibly simple. It is an incredibly simple design by Jesus Christ that holds all things together. And people are like atoms. An atom is made up of a nucleus and electrons. The nucleus is the center, and in the nucleus, it's either a proton or a neutron. That's it. There's more in some, less in others, but there's always a nucleus. There's always protons and neutrons. The nucleus are you stabilizers. You're the ones that are held together. The other element of the atom are the electrons. And they're all over the place. They're here or there. They don't have any form or function other than they're connected to that nucleus, and they're all over the place, but they stay connected to the nucleus. Now, what would happen if you could split the electrons from the nucleus? You could blow up cities. You could have an atomic explosion. But in God's magnificent plan, the atom is what holds it all together, and you and I are part of God's creation, and in the personality world, really, you're the nucleus, the stable factor, or you're the electron, the exciting factor. Electrons without a nucleus would tear the world to pieces. Put five innovators in one room, and bad things will happen. They will fight, they will argue, each one knows better than the other. Put 5 stabilizers in the room and nothing happens. Everything is fine. The favorite slogan of the stabilizer, if it ain't broke. The favorite phrase of the innovator, if it ain't broke, break it. Let's see if we can make it better. If it's working good, maybe we can make it better. That's what makes the world go around. Now, in marriages, there's usually a balance. One of you is an electron, the other is a nucleus. One of you is a stabilizer. One of you is the one that keeps things exciting. Occasionally, 2 innovators marry each other, and those are really wild, tumultuous, exciting marriages. They're the ones that explore the world. They're the ones that chew each other to pieces. You know, you watch them and go, wow, what a dynamic couple. And then behind closed doors, they're exploding. So God gives us a balance. Now, if you're married to the same thing, that doesn't mean, well, Robert says we need to get a divorce because you're an electron and I'm a nucleus. Don't stay together. God put you together. But in relationship, there's a balance where one is the stable factor and one is the challenge factor, the one that makes it exciting. In our marriage, I married my stabilizer. I guess you figured out I'm an innovator. But I married my stabilizer, Julie, 37 years ago. And for a long time, I kept trying to get her to get out of the boat, get out of the comfort zone. You know, the innovators write the books about get out of your comfort zone. The stabilizer says, why? It's comfortable here. It works. Everything's fine. Why do I have to do that? And that's the tension. And with Julie and I kept trying to get her to get out of her comfort zone. And because she loved me, she did. But it was that, do we have this? And then she kept trying to get me to calm down and slow down. And when she did, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. Are you relaxed? Yes, I'm relaxed. You don't look like it. Well, I am. I'm relaxed, okay? I'm relaxed when I'm doing something. I'm either sleeping or doing. That's my options. God has blessed us. We've had 37 years of marriage because somewhere along that journey, we figured out, look, let the innovator innovate, let the stabilizer stabilize. God blessed us with a house. I talk about my cliff. We live on a house it's on a bluff or a cliff. I call it a cliff because if you take the next step, you're about 30 feet down before you hit rocks and then about 60 feet down to the creek bed. It's one of those little tiny yard, but it backs up to the cliff, and it's magnificent because it faces due north. And I love it. The last few weeks have been phenomenal because the storms come rolling in from the north. And I mean, the sky is black with water and just boiling and moving and lightning. And then the other day, there was coming in from the north, and then there was one blowing in from the south, and it just started. I was looking out, Lord, am I going to get to see a tornado? I sit right on the edge of the cliff, and I just watch the storm roll in. It comes in, I get rained on, and when I'm finally soaked, I go in. But I just love that. I love to me, I worship the Lord in the storm because I go, whoa, and this is just a little storm, and you're the God of creation. I find it magnificent. I've tried to get Julie to enjoy the moments with me. Never happens. First puff of wind, she's inside, and she's watching me. Have fun watching your storm on your cliff. And I say, have fun watching it on the news. I'll be in a little while. She said, what if you get struck by lightning out there? I said, what a fantastic way to go. I shared this last night, and several people said, we'd like to see your cliff. So I shot a little video of my cliff. So from now on, when you hear me talk about my cliff, this is it. Hey, people keep asking to see my cliff, so here you go. There it is. Now, I put my big ugly toes in there for perspective for you. The innovators in the room are going, man, that is cool. Why don't we move and get a cliff? And the stabilizers are going, he's crazier than we thought. That's what makes life work. Jesus is both innovator and stabilizer. He came in and he changed the world. He changed systems. That's innovation. But he said, I am always with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. That's stability. We cry out to him in our darkest hours, and he's there, stabilizer, giving us peace and security in the midst of the storm. And then there are times when his Spirit moves us to do things that we know are really out there, and if he doesn't do something, it's not going to work. He was the perfect balance of the two. Let me show you the story in Matthew chapter 14. He'd sent his disciples away. They just fed the 5,000. It's chapter 14, verse 22. Jesus insisted the disciples go back across the other side of the lake, Sea of Galilee. Then he sent the people home. It was late at night. He went up on the mountain to pray. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far from the land, verse 24. They were struggling for their life. Now, these were commercial fishermen, and Sea of Galilee, it's not that big. It's really a lake, called it Lake Tiberias. It's smaller than Lake Tahoe, if you've ever been there. Lake Tahoe is 11 miles wide. Sea of Galilee is 8, so it's not that big a lake, but it's deep, and when the winds howl with the mountains all around, it can stir up a storm in a hurry. They were scared to death. They're fighting for their lives. It's the 4th hour of the night, which is 3 to 6 in the morning. The other Gospels tell us this. And they're fighting for their life, trying to bail water out. They're trying to keep everything from falling apart. They know it's a storm, and they're doing everything they can to stay alive. They've probably been in them before. But there's this point where they realize this may be the one that takes us down. 11 guys in a boat, probably a little overloaded, so they're fighting for their life. Verse 27. Jesus comes walking out to them. In their fear, they cry out, it's a ghost. Only thing worse than about to die in a storm is seeing some guy walking on the water in the storm. We know the story, so we go, well, that'd be cool. Not if you saw somebody walking. You'd think, that's your angel. He's come to get you. Here we go. Jesus said, take courage. Don't be afraid. It's me. I am here. I love the King James. It is I. Be not afraid. I used to say that to my kids when they were growing. They'd be all scared. I say, it is I. Be not afraid. And sometimes I say, it is I. Be afraid. Peter called out to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. Jesus said, yes, come. So Peter went over the side of the boat. He walked on the water toward Jesus. When he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified, and he began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" Now, first of all, let me disclaim this. Jesus is not insulting Peter. Everybody on earth, including Jesus, knows that Peter just did that incredible step of faith. They were close friends. It was sort of a tongue-in-cheek look. Hey, we're out here in the middle of a storm, and the message was, look, hang on tight. The same faith that got you out of the boat towards me, keep that. It will guard you the rest of your life. And Peter did. Now, for those in this room, by the way, how many of you have identified yourself by now as probably an innovator? Raise your hand, innovators. Hold them up high proudly. Don't be ashamed. Okay? Hands down, and then stabilizers. Would you all raise your hands up? There's always a lot more stabilizers than innovators, and that's by God's design, okay? So here we go. Innovators, this one's for you. 3 ideas. Number 1, take calculated risks. Let me hear you say take calculated risks. Innovators get an idea, and it's going to be a great idea, and in their mind, their brain says this is the greatest thing, the greatest investment, the greatest relationship, this is going to be fantastic, and they go all in. And once in a great while, they go all in, and they win, and they go, see? But sometimes that win doesn't account for all the losses. Take a calculated risk. Where is that in the story? They're scared to death, and Jesus said, "It's me, be not afraid." And Peter says, "Lord, if it's really you, then let me walk to you on the water." That's a calculated risk. When Jesus said, "It is I, be not afraid," Peter didn't jump out of the boat and start swimming or walking or running to Jesus. He takes a calculated risk. Why didn't he say, "Well, Lord, if it's really you, get in the boat with us. Lord, if it's really you, fix the storm. Lord, if it's really you, make the sky light up"? But he says, "If it's really you, let me walk to you on the water." Translation, that is really cool. I would like to do that. If it's really you, then let me do that. No demon, angel, or ghost is going to say, "Yeah, come on out, sure." But Jesus said, "It's me," and Peter gets out of the boat. Calculated risks. Really important you figure that out. Really important you innovators ask, what is the best thing that can happen? You already know that. But what is the worst thing that can happen? If this works, how am I going to follow up? If this doesn't work, how am I going to cut my losses and move on? Innovators are always going to innovate. You don't have to tell an innovator to innovate. But innovators, you need to take calculated risks. The stabilizers in your life are going to say, think this through. Write down the pros and the cons, the good and the bad, all that. Innovators hate that because they just want to jump out of the boat. But you're here today to hear this message. Take a calculated risk. Maybe it's a good investment, but don't put everything you've got into it. Put a limited amount into it. If it works, praise the Lord. But the innovator says, well, that investment worked. If I'd put everything in there, we'd be billionaires. Yeah, but if it didn't work like all your other investments, you'd be flat broke. Calculated risk innovators. I became an innovator. I knew I was. I didn't know it was a term, but I was 4 years old. My older brother was 7, and he was climbing trees, and we were visiting some friend's house, and they had a fantastic tree in the backyard, and Harry, my brother, climbed up it a little ways and came down. I said, I want to climb. I'd never climbed a tree, climbed swing sets and stuff. So I was 4 years old. So I start climbing up the tree just like my big brother did. Little ways up, he says, Butch, you better stop climbing. Now, Butch was my nickname, that's what he called me. You don't need to call me that. That was his name. But he said, Butch, you better stop climbing. Now, when you tell a 4-year-old innovator stop climbing, what does that mean? Yeah, you got him. It's basic psychology. He said, you better stop climbing. I said, you can't make me. He said, stop, Butch, you're going to get hurt. I said, I'm all right. And I started climbing up the tree, and it was really fun. And the further I climbed, the further away he got. Boy, he got madder, and, you're going to get in trouble. The ultimate big brother thing, I'm going to tell Dad. Tell Dad, I don't care. We're climbing up. I'm up in this tree, and it was in Memphis, Tennessee, where they have real trees. Texas, we don't. Our trees are 10 feet high. You can fall off, and nothing happens. But it was way up. And I was climbing on up, and I stopped at the top of the tree. It was the coolest experience. I will never forget it in my life. 4 years old. And I look around, and I am higher than the roof of the house. And when you're 4 and you're higher than the roof on the house, that's like God. And I'm higher than the roof. Come on down, Butch. And I look around so I can see the cars. Oh, this is real. And I'm swaying, and I'm just loving the moment. That's how I guess you would know I was an innovator. Some people go, oh, I went, wow. My brother said, Butch, come down. I said, I can't. Calculated risk is this. Don't climb up a tree if you haven't learned how to climb down one first. I hadn't learned to climb down, so I'm hanging on there, and I can't find the branches below me. I look like a little koala bear in the commercial. You know, he tells his friend goes, gets his dad climbs up there, works his way down. You would think that would teach you a lesson. No way. He taught me how to climb down. But I became a tree climber, calculated risk. What's it going to cost? If I go this far and it doesn't work, what's going to happen? If I get into this relationship and it goes south, what's going to happen? How much of my emotions am I going to invest in this? Innovators, you're always thinking outside the box. Take a calculated risk when you do. Second idea, don't expect the stabilizers to get out of the boat. Don't ask them to get out of the boat. Don't expect them to get out of the boat. They don't want to get out of the boat. They don't need to get out of the boat. You're the innovator. You innovate pretty much one at a time. Innovators get out of the boat, and it's exciting and wonderful, and it's exhilarating. They go, come on, you ought to do this. Innovators jump out of planes, and they skydive, and they come back, and they tell all the stabilizers, oh, it's great, you're going to love it. If you're married to one of the innovators, bless all of you that jumped out of a plane on behalf of your spouse and scared you to death. Look, innovators, stop talking the stabilizers out of the boat. Leave them alone. They're in the boat for a reason. Innovators, don't expect people to follow you. You step out of the boat. They're not going to join you. You're not going to get support, but that's okay because you're wired to drive. You're wired to push. In the world of machinery, you're the bulldozer. They're the maintainers, the road compactors, the tar machines. They make it work. You plow through. But don't expect everybody to come plowing through with you. One thing I learned as an innovator in the pastoral world, I love planting churches. And I thought, it's so wonderful, it's so easy. Man, walk into an empty room with a chair and a microphone, let's start a church. And I used to talk pastors into planting churches. And it was discouraging because they hated it. Why do you hate it? This is awesome. It was awesome for me, but it wasn't for them. And the Lord said, look, would you just do your ministry? I'll inspire them to plant, and when I do, they'll come to you and you can help them. But don't be talking people into planting because not everybody's a planter. Not everybody's a counselor. Not everybody's a prophet. Not everybody's that. You got to let God make us who we are. Don't expect the stabilizers to follow you. When Peter called to Jesus, here in the Bible, he says, Lord, if it's really you, let me come to you. Tell me, come to you. He didn't say, Lord, if it's really you, tell my little brother Andrew to walk on the water to you. Tell James and John, Lord, if it's really you, tell all of us to get out of the boat and let's walk to you. He's a smart innovator. He said, Lord, if it's really you, calculated risk, I will take the risk. I'll go out there. If I go down, you got 11 others. But Lord, tell me, not us, not them. Innovators, you need to follow the same example. If God's telling you to do something, step out of your boat. But if everybody doesn't follow you, don't get mad at them. There's a purpose for that. The third idea for the innovators is prepare yourself for the waves that are going to hit. They are going to hit. Now, granted, the guys were in a wave of storms anyway, but they had a boat. They had sticks, they had wood, it all busted apart, grab a piece of wood and float along. When you're out there walking on the water, there's nothing but faith. Peter gets out of the water and out of the boat and he's walking on the water towards Jesus, and you know the story. He sees the waves crashing and he begins to doubt. Well, who wouldn't? You're in the middle of a storm, you're drowning, you just got out of a boat and the boat's still going, the storm's still there, and he starts going down. But as he's going down, he doesn't wait till he's drowning. As he's going down, as soon as he realizes this is going south, he says, Lord, save me. And Jesus reaches down and saves him. Then they get back in the boat, storm's still going on. When they get in the boat, Jesus goes, shh. And the storm calms down immediately, and it looks like just a pond or a lake, and they get to the other side. The waves are going to hit you. There are going to come times where you realize, I've gone too far, I've pushed too much, I've gone one step over the line. In my life, I call it one branch too high. I was 11 years old, living in Louisiana now. They also have great trees. I love climbing into the top of the trees when the wind blows. It was just like the baby song, Rockabye Baby in the treetops. And I used to love climbing to the top of the trees, and it's just that rush, that thrill. Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this stuff? Yeah, it's just that, whoa, wow, this is exciting. Well, just like the song, when the bow breaks. My bow broke. I mean, I'm up, higher than the houses, way up high, just enjoying the moment. I'm 10, 11 years old. All of a sudden, a branch breaks, And by God's grace, I swing and I grab the branch right below me and grab the trunk. Lord, whatever your angel's name is that watches out for me, angel, if you're in here, thank you, thank you, thank you. How many times have you had to go, whoop, save Robert? How many times did Jesus say, look, he's at the top of a tree, need you to help out here. Got him, Lord, put him back on the tree. I don't know why I didn't fall all the way through the branches to the ground, breaking parts of my body and dying, but, at 10, you don't figure all that out. You just, that just scared the daylights out of you, and I never climbed to the top of a tree again. Expect the bow to break. Expect the waves to hit. Take calculated risks. Think through what you're doing. Keep on innovating. You'll do that. Innovators will have the bow break, waves will hit, and you'll mess things up. You go, I am never going to do that again. Why do I do this to myself over and over? I keep doing these things. Why? And the innovator says, I'm never going to do that again. And they don't. Sometimes for 3 and 4 weeks. But eventually they're out looking again for what's the next journey, the next adventure. God bless the innovator. You orthopedic surgeons should praise God for the innovators. All right, innovators, relax. You got it. Take calculated risks. Don't expect the stabilizers to get out of the boat and prepare yourself. Stabilizers. I know you were wondering, was there anything in it for you? Yes. Stay in the boat. Please stay in the boat. You are wired by God to stay in the boat. Executive officers, managers, supervisors, those people that are there on time, do their work, they're faithful, they're solid, they don't get out of the box, they don't try new things, the system works, why would we change it? This is great. Stabilizers make the world smooth, the very nature stabilizer. If the nucleus gave up, then the electrons would go all over the place and you'd have the explosion. But by God's design, most of you are stabilizers. Do not let the innovator talk you out of getting out of the boat. Next time they do, you just say, I'm a stabilizer. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead. Make sure the insurance is signed. But I'm staying in the boat. There's nothing wrong with staying in the boat. Quit being intimidated by people that get out of the boat thinking you're missing something. No, if you were supposed to get out of the boat, you'd get out of the boat. But if you're comfortable in the boat, stay in the boat. Stay in your comfort zone. It is not a sin to stay in your comfort zone. It's not a sin to work for the same company doing the same job for 40 years. Stabilizers like stability. In the family world, the stabilizer is there when the children go off and mess up, and spouses they're that force that holds the nucleus together. In our family, Julie is that stabilizer. She's the wheel on the hub of the wheel. All the spokes go in different directions, but she's always that stable force. She's always praying for everybody. She's always there. You can call her, text her anytime, and she's there. That's stabilizers. Praise God for them. Let me hear you say, stabilizers, stay in the boat. And stabilizer, one other thing for you. Cheer, support, and organize your innovators' efforts. You say, what? Well, yeah. Only reason you have a boat to get in the first place is an innovator built it. Only reason we have buildings because innovators says there's got to be something better than caves. Only reason we're eating vegetables now is because, well, actually we started with meat, we were meat eaters, but the innovators are the ones that push out. So the stabilizer, you got to cheer them on. Go out, give it a try, see if that works, see if that works. Go to the Pacific Highway and see if there's something there that we need to go out to do. Pioneers in that. Most of the country stayed in the east, but pioneers went west. The innovator says, maybe there's something better. You don't know if you don't check. Stabilizers, stabilize. Tell your innovator, go give it a try. If you don't try, you'll never know. Ask, you never know. You give them all the right words. Trust your innovators. And when innovators are coming up with ideas, innovators will come up with ideas and new systems, and we'll be throwing them out. And everybody goes, oh, that's great, because innovators sell. But once it's sold, the innovator's moving on to the next thing. Stabilizers are catching all the moving parts. Whoa, 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 whoa. And they put it together. Stabilizers are obligated to tell the innovator, have you thought about dun, 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 dun? Oh, man, you're a wet blanket. You're running. No. I'm doing my job as a stabilizer. I'm just saying, before you jump out of the boat, have you thought about this and this and this? What if this happens? What if that happens? You're the systems people. You're the organization. You're the one that keeps the world together. And that is a gift from God. You can't have stabilizers without innovators. You can't have innovators without stabilizers. God created them both. Learn to say, I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. He has made me who I am to do what I'm supposed to do, and by God's grace, I will do it all the days of my life. Whether that's innovating or whether that's stabilizing, it takes both. Now, what you learn from this story is innovators and stabilizers both needed Jesus. The innovators out there, you go, well, sure, he needed Jesus. I mean, imagine if all the innovators got out of the stabilizers had gotten out of the boat. There would have been no boat left to get back into at the end of the story, would there? Boat would have sank. But the stabilizers kept it going. But Peter said in 3 magical words, when he's going down, he says, Lord, save me. And Jesus doesn't say, no, you got yourself in this fix. You can get yourself out of it. You're the one sinking. Why don't you just swim back to the boat? No, he said, Lord, save me. No excuses, no nothing. And Jesus reached down and he grabbed him and said, oh, ye of little faith. The guy's walking on water. That ain't exactly faithless, folks. But it's Jesus loving his best friend, saying, hey, you're walking on the water. But when you start going down, you know the right person to call to. They get back in the boat, the winds calm down, and the 11 stabilizers, they all worship Jesus. I said, what kind of a man is this that even the winds obey him? He's the creator of the winds. Have you called on Jesus? Have you had that moment where you were sinking, that moment of realization where you go, I need forgiveness, I need saving, I need new life. Lord, save me. If you have, that's your salvation. For Peter, it was in the storm in the water, but he got saved. For me, I was 11 years old, guilty of sin. I called on the Lord. He forgave my sin, and there's not a doubt in my mind that was my moment of salvation. What's yours? What story, what pictures come into your mind as I say this? If there isn't one, then you haven't had it yet. So how do you know? Well, because life's experiences, we know when we're married or divorced or when we graduate, when we got a job or not. So we know when we're saved or not. So if you're going, well, I'm not sure I got christened or catechized or baptized, I went to this and that, but it never really connected, then assume you haven't cried out to him for yourself yet. But this is that day. Call out to the Lord. You might be in a storm right now. Lord, save me. He will. The Bible says the moment that we confess with our mouth, Jesus, your Lord, and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, it says you are saved. With your heart you believe you're made right with God. With your mouth you confess it, you say it, and that's salvation.